I could put you in the waiting room if I wanted to.
Good. I mean,
yeah. So
if you
behave.
I will try. Do my absolute best. Hello, and welcome to Middleish, the podcast about moderation in all things. I am Michael Gray.
And I am Erin Green.
Erin Green, everybody. There
Erin
she
Green.
is. The one and only.
You could say it like a basketball announcer, right? Where you're like, Erin Green.
And then right? I need like the air horn like that.
Yeah. My friend in high school was named Carmen Duke. And our like basketball coach and, you know, weightlifting teacher and whatever, like the phys ed teacher of the high school. Mm-hmm. And he was our history teacher. So he always was like, Carmen, dude, because it just had that like resonating sound of like someone you would announce at a basketball game. And so
it does have that. Yeah.
I was like, my name just doesn't. And it was, my maiden name was Miller in high school. And so that's not a great, I don't know. Carmen
I think for
Duke
years you would have to drag out the air and you'd be like, Erin Miller,
yeah,
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be, see, you should have been an announcer. You sound.
I still could be. I mean,
you could. I mean,
I've got enough time in my life for 7 or 8 more careers. So
it's never too late.
I'm
watching Seinfeld episodes right now because I've never actually gotten into it. And I know there's like this whole cult following and there's so many punchlines that are about Seinfeld, right? The show about nothing. And there's one episode, isn't there, where they're brainstorming like the different jobs that George can get after he loses his job.
Yeah, and one of them sports announcer.
One of them sports announcer. And they kind of look at each other like, you kind of need experience for that. And maybe.
Yeah. So are you like a few seasons into it?
Yeah, I'm on season 4.
And
I just put it on.
What's the result so far?
I'm having a blast. I just put it on when I'm like preparing dinner or, you know, it's too easy just to turn on like the news or, you know, if there's like a series I'm into that I really have to watch closely because there's stuff going on that I don't want to miss, then I don't want to be kind of multitasking while I'm watching it. And so Seinfeld is just easy. Like you can listen to it and still be puttering around the house and catch everything, you know, but oh my gosh, I watched the one the other day where the master of your domain, you know, that episode, and Kramer leaves.
I'm out.
Comes back with the money. I'm out.
Yeah, it's like 30 seconds later.
I was laughing so hard. And Matt had told me about that episode before, and because he remembers it. And I was like, I've never seen it. So I was kind of waiting for that to come. And then I was watching it yesterday and I was just laughing so hard in our kitchen.
Yeah,
and Matt's like,
funny.
what are you watching? Seinfeld. Yeah,
Seinfeld.
It's good.
Yeah, it's a good show.
Stuff. We all need a little humor. A little humor.
Just a little bit, not too much, because
we need to take
all of this very seriously, and we don't want pee pants. So there's that too. Yeah.
You just channeled your Michael Scott there. That was.
I said pee pants.
Oh yeah, when you like looked very seriously about pee pants, like anybody who could say pee pants and not crack a smile is.
I was very serious. Because I was thinking like just some dumb joke about, you know, being serious about life and stuff. And then you with pee pants. And I was like, yeah, I don't want that more than I don't want to be serious or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, how's things? You had an eventful weekend, right?
We did. Yeah. We volunteered for the Boise Brave mountain bike camp. So our friend Lance Davison, who we've had on the podcast a couple times before.
Hi, Lance.
Hi, Lance. His daughter is in the camp. She is a mountain biker and student leader in the camp. And then his son, Cody, who is only, gosh, how old is he? 4, maybe, is too young to be in the camp. But let me tell you, that kid was in charge all weekend.
Yeah.
He was
Awesome.
he was wearing a vest called the check-in boss. And the
Check
vest
in.
is like down, check in, like you're checking
Check
into
in
the
boss.
camp,
Okay.
not chicken,
I
check
wasn't
in.
sure if I thought I heard check in, but I thought it was chicken. I would like to know what
No,
chicken boss
but
is.
he's so little that his vest was like dragging down around his ankles, and he was just
Uh-huh.
running around like waving flags and making sure everybody knew where they were going, and it was cracking me up. So anyway, Matt and I were asked to come talk to the kids about, of course, I did some nutrition stuff. Matt and I both kind of tag team some race prep, like mental prep for races, and
Mm-hmm.
just things that you can do to make sure your race day is as enjoyable as possible. And if you're competitive, these are some of the things to think about and to prepare for. And then we rode with the kids. We did like all the little skills stations, and it was great. We were just up there one night, camping at Jug Mountain, which is outside of McCall, kind of between Boise and McCall, if any of you know Idaho.
Nice.
And it was just really fun. Like we had several parents asking, "So do you have kids in this group?" And we're like, "No."
Nope.
Well, how do you
Nope.
have kids? How old are they? Nope, no kids. And they're like, well,
They
"Why
are
are you
zero.
here? Why are you here?" And I'm like, "Well, to be honest, I mean, yes, we were asked to do this. And yes, our friend Lance we just can't say
Yeah.
no. He's such a
Yeah.
great guy. But at the same time, I really feel like I have this, not really a duty or obligation, but maybe one of the ways I can maybe give back to my community is to be like part of that village, right? Like it takes a village to raise children, and to be part of that mentoring, whether it's like a big sister or the cool auntie
Yeah.
or like another parent type that's just there helping. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
it's a small little sacrifice to like go up for a weekend and hang out with these
Right.
kids and have fun and ride mountain bikes. I mean, geez. So
Right.
anyway,
Yeah. Just
yeah.
don't be that weird lady that's always there.
Yeah, the
You
weirdo
don't
that
want to
they're
fill
like,
that
you
role. Like,
again, you
who was that
again.
weird lady that was always at everything as a kid?
She's always talking about this weird sport, triathlon. I don't know what that is. Yeah. She's always talking
But
about
sounds like
food.
fun. Sounds like a good time.
It was.
Good
And then
weather.
yesterday we were just, yeah, it's
Nice.
just funny in the mountains how cold it is. Like it was
Mhm.
frosty when we woke up in the morning, but as soon as the sun hits,
Frosty.
everything melts off, and then it gets downright hot. Like the sun is so intense when you're at elevation. But yeah,
Yeah.
we had a good time. Good time.
Nice. Good,
How about
good.
your weekend?
My weekend was good. My parents had been here for about a week. They left on last Thursday. This weekend it was super busy, but just like around the house stuff. Like I think I worked outside on Saturday for like 8 hours. It was great. Just like flower beds and mowing and weeding and all kinds of stuff. And then Sunday was pretty chill. Went swimming over at Kat's mom's for a while and had pizza and yeah, nice Sunday. It
Perfect.
was
I
good.
like it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like it. And the 4th of July is coming up. So we've got
Yeah,
more.
I know. I kind of didn't
It's
realize
like
that till just like yesterday. I was like, oh,
full
what?
swing. Yeah. Summer
July?
is here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not messing
Crazy.
around. It's already
I
cruising.
know.
So,
I know.
yeah. So, shall we dive in?
Yeah. Let's talk about today's topic,
Let's do.
which we kind of went back and forth on what we were going to call this, because we both were recognizing the need to talk about this stuff, but we're like,
Mhm.
how do you like form it into like a cohesive topic? So
Right.
we titled it Expect the Unexpected, because when the way we work with clients, and their lives, I mean, it's all about fitting healthy behaviors and your goals for yourself and your family
Mhm.
into an unpredictable life full of all kinds of obstacles and challenges and
Mhm.
good fortune and like all of these, really great unexpected things. And so how can we, I was always thinking of the word nimble, like how can you be
Mhm.
nimble with all of this stuff happening to you that you have no idea that it's coming, that's just life. So we're going to kind of talk about that. We have several client examples today, and just different stories to share with you to maybe hopefully encourage you to look
Yeah,
at this as a positive thing and not a negative thing when life kind of
exactly.
comes at you.
Yeah. And I think, it's one of those sayings that I mean, Aaron and I haven't talked about this specifically, but I can 100% guess that it's the case, is that when you're working with clients like this, in this capacity that we are, with nutrition and exercise and lifestyle stuff, like it's not just when, like, or if, it's not if things get disrupted, it's they're absolutely going to. And I think one of the main points I want to, and I'm probably going to drive this home a lot this episode, so just get used to it, because I think it's important to repeat a lot, is that those disruptions, I think too often we think they are something to try to like build out some plan that we avoid them. And I don't think that's the case. I think those disruptions are part of it. They're not something we hopefully like can never have to come in contact with. I think they're a lot of times important to come in contact with. And they're also just like, that's life. It's always going to do something different than you thought it was. And so I don't think the point is how do we strategize so we never have these disruptions. It's how do we learn to navigate them? Because I tell clients this, I'm like, great, things are going real well right now. At some point, they're not going to.
Yeah.
Like, that's not to be discouraging. That's just what's coming. And so when things are going easier right now, cool. When they stop going this easy, that doesn't mean we're doing things wrong. It means life has happened. And so now we get the opportunity, which I think this is an important way to position it. We get the opportunity to practice pivoting. We get the opportunity to practice being flexible and bending and adjusting and that kind of stuff, so that we can continue to move forward.
Yeah. And I think that's a good conversation to have with anybody that is trying to, kind of change their lives in some way. I mean, whether it's in our space with healthy behaviors, whether somebody is tackling their finances and maybe coming up with like a budget, financial plan. If somebody is changing jobs and all of a sudden they have like a different commute, different schedule or whatever. I mean, there's some really big life disruptions or, hiccups that happen and changes. And those I think are almost easier for people to strategize around because they are so big that it's like, oh, I have to completely adjust. Like I have no choice. I think sometimes it's the little day-to-day hiccups that really trip people up, especially I see this a lot with eating where, people like wake up in the morning and they start with their healthy breakfast that they've planned. And then they get to work and they're like, yeah, I've brought snacks. I brought a lunch. And then they have a meeting that runs late, or, they had an extra client thrown into their schedule or something else happened. And all of a sudden they're kind of thrown off. And then there's donuts in the break room. And then there's a taco truck out front and all of a sudden their day is just like gone. And they just sort of slide off their plan all of a sudden to think, oh, it's just futile. Like, why even try today? I'll start over tomorrow. Or why even try this week? I'll start over next week. Or why even try right now? I'll try in the summertime. So like all of a sudden we get into this all or none thinking. I didn't ace my day. I didn't nail all the things I had set out to do. And so I'm just done. I'll start over tomorrow. And that is what Michael and I are trying to prevent, is first of all, the thought that you have failed somehow because there was some unexpected thing thrown your way. And secondly, the idea that it's all or nothing. Like you either nail it and do everything you plan to do, or you're just forget it, start with a clean slate tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'll ask you this, but so, okay, this is just like kind of made up, but let me ask it this way. Do you see this pretty commonly with people you work with? Is this struggle to either not give in to all or none thinking, or almost like a dedication to reinforce that it's the only way to do things? Like I mean, I know it's incredibly common for me, and I'm assuming it is for you, but just ask me, you see that a lot.
I do. Yeah. In fact, I have one client who's just very insightful about her own like thought process. I mean, she's been through therapy. She's been through a lot of stuff. And she's like, I really have this tendency to just take my ball and go home. Like if it's not going my way, I'm out. Like she sort of kind of puts up this mental block that she's just, well, fine, I'm just not going to do it then. And we've been doing a lot of work around that, like with specific instances around eating or exercise or, some of the things we're working on together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what are other options? Sure, you can quote, take your ball and go home. What are some other ways you could handle that situation? Like, let's think of all the different possibilities you could handle that situation and maybe see that there's something in the middle-ish that you could do.
Right. Yeah. So let's start there, or not start there, but let's go there. So because I think like for a lot of people, I think a lot of that struggle with all or none is like, it's not I don't think the intent is to be like have an extreme point of view, but I think a lot of times it's either, well, I'm doing it or I'm not.
Yeah.
Like those are the options. And doing it only looks like whatever they've decided it's going to look like, or whatever they've been told, whatever it is. And it's like, I'm either doing all the things because all the things have to be done together in this way to be worthwhile, or there's nothing. And so that, to me, there's a lot of space in between all or none, and one thing that I pitch that to clients, like, hey, what about, so what's in between there? Like, I think there are a million stops along the way between, dropping everything or doing everything. But that often is a hard time for people to kind of wrap their heads around, So what are some ways that you help people kind of try to find some of that middle ground between the all or none?
Yeah.
Or do you have a story or anything like that?
Well, your comment, like this whole, do you either doing the thing or you're not doing the thing. I mean, we've talked before about taking action, and that is definitely this do or do not. When somebody says to me, I try to do this, I try to do that, I'm like, well, tell me more about the try part, because that's where there's either a disconnect in the action the person is taking, or in their belief about what is the right way to do it, or what's the not the right way to do it. Right. And so I think it's important to say, like, well, yes, action is definitely, you are either doing something or you're not doing it. And there's no judgment attached to that. It's simply just recognizing, well, what's your expectation about what you're going to be doing? So, let's see if I can think of an example. So there's a client I have.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay.
Think of a story right now.
I do have a lot of stories. I'm just trying to organize this specific, do or do not thing. Yeah. So I have a client who has a unique job in the healthcare field where this client is on call a lot, and they often work nights, and they are doing work that is very emotionally demanding. It's hospice work. So essentially helping people transition to passing away. Very honorable and much needed, right? But you can also imagine the emotional toll that it takes, and especially like working nights, being on call. So trying to find a balance there. And this person has a tendency to, as they put it, downshift and go. Like when things are put on their plate, or when extra demands are put on, they downshift and go. So this person has a tendency to just throttle on, like no matter how tired they are, no matter how little sleep. I mean, we're talking working like, I think 30 some hours straight kind of thing. Like, nice. I mean, really, really demanding kind of stuff where that's a whole nother, conversation. I'm like, I'm not a career counselor, but we maybe need to talk about like the cost of this, but we have had a lot of conversations around self-care. And because I can give somebody in that situation a menu plan, right? Like I could write out like, this is exactly what we think you should eat according to the dietary guidelines. And this is how many minutes of exercise you should be getting. And this is how much sleep you should be getting.
Ounces of almonds.
Right? Like sure, I could write all that stuff out and send it their way, but then how is that person going to implement these things? And so we have all these conversations around what's your life like? What can you accommodate? And how can you take action in that direction? So, for example, saying like, let's try for more fruits and vegetables in your day, just because the days were centered around like carbs and protein and anything filling, fast food, sugary caffeinated beverages, those kinds of things. And I was like, well, here's one simple thing you could do that would improve your diet quality. I mean, from its baseline. Right. And so our do or do not was simply, are you putting a fruit or vegetable into, we didn't have a certain number a day. We didn't have certain like specifics around it. It was, how can you do more than you were doing before? And our comparison was just simply that original kind of food log that we went over and talking about it. And then discussing every time we meet, how are you focusing on this? How are you putting this top of mind? What kinds of things are you doing differently than you were before? And I think putting it into that space, instead of saying you have to get 5 a day, or you have to get one every time you eat, or you have, I mean, that works for some people, right. But for this person, it was way more helpful to say like, well, here's how we're going to measure and see if you are actually doing something differently than before and making progress, but we're not going to put any kind of weird expectation on it. We're simply going to say, are you putting that effort into it? So just really helping that space in between that you're talking about, just be what it is and not put any kind of weird constraints on it. And they're doing really well with that. In fact, I have one more piece to share about this client. Went through like a couple weeks of putting that into play, where I could see, just based on their feedback to me, that they're really focusing on putting a little more effort into adding more, adding a veggie here, adding a fruit here, keeping it in the house more, taking it to work with them. And I said, you're doing so great. What would you like to do for next week? I mean, do you want to expand on this and add to it? And I was so proud, because that person said, actually, if it's okay, I'd really just like to stick with doing this and really nailing it. And I was like, oh, bravo, because that told me that they knew this was still taking a lot of energy to work toward. They're doing the things in the best capacity that they can, but they're kind of at their bandwidth, length right now. And so that was a self-care move. And I made sure to point that out. Like, hey, you didn't just downshift and go in this, from our conversation just to please me. You actually put up a little boundary and said, actually my needs are dictating that this is probably enough for me to focus on right now. I thought it was a really, really powerful thing. And it speaks to what we're talking about, because this person's life is so unpredictable and so demanding in lots of other ways, that they're taking action in the way that is meaningful and doable for them, which is what we're after. We want it to be sustainable. So
no, I like that. I stole this from precision. I always have a hard time saying this word. Precision nutrition. And I may have talked about this on here before. I think you and I may have talked about. I know I talk about a lot with my clients, but it's this. I can't remember what they call it. Something like the dial method or something like that. But it's a concept that I really like. I think it's easy to grab hold of, and it's like, if we think of like, our life as like a dial from 0 to 10, and you can have a dial for nutrition and exercise and hobbies and family. You can have it for everything. But like, I think usually we're talking about like nutrition and exercise, maybe sleep, maybe some self-care stuff, that kind of stuff. But if 10, if cranking it to 10 is like the absolute most that you are capable of doing, energy wise, time wise, capacity wise, all that, when life is working perfectly, right? Like when everything's just clicking along and you've got as much available time and energy as you can possibly have and you can recover from, that's a 10. And I think most of us, what we do is like, when it's okay, I'm going to start making changes to like my health and stuff, crank it up, let's go to 10. And that's my only option.
Let's burn out that dial.
Until I burn it out and the dial breaks off, and then I have to repair it in a year again. I try later. right?
Yeah.
Like that's a real common story. And so what I like about this dial method is this concept is just like, and I'll say this to clients, like, okay, we've been here. So maybe we've been at a 7 or 8 for the last couple of weeks. Okay. Work got busy and you got a couple of kids with colds and they're not sleeping well. Like stuff just happened. So what if instead of just shutting everything down, if maybe we were at a 7 or 8, what does a 5 look like? Like, what would that look like? And is that doable? What would a 3 look like? Is that doable? And there's something about like that image of it not being an on and off switch, but a dial that we can change the intensity on. And when people are like, oh, so I can still have a certain intensity, I can just dial it back, right? I can still do some things. And a lot of times when we talk about this concept, like we'll talk about like, hey, if we still did this and this over the next week compared to nothing over the next week, here's where we're going to be. Here's where looking, I even said, like, so I think this is really important. It's not just about what you do, but it's about like rehearsing and strengthening that muscle of looking at where do I have available time? Where do I have available space? What can I do? Because to me, that muscle, it works whether you're at a 1 or a 10. It's still being stretched. It's still being strengthened. It's still that awareness and all that kind of stuff. And so I really like that picture of it. Like, hey, well, let's just turn things down a bit. So stuff's still on. Everything's still on. Just the volume's not as loud, and then when things calm down, we can crank it back up a bit. But it has this flexibility feel to it, and it is an ease to it. Let's just turn it down a bit and let's turn it back up a bit. And it's not this super complicated thing. And that's typically the imagery I use for the all or none thinking, just because I really like it. I can't take any credit for it. But I just really like that concept of let's just dial it back a bit. Let's turn things down
I
a
love
bit.
that. I love giving some kind of a range. I do the same thing when I ask somebody, based on the goals that you chose last time we spoke, or based on this specific thing you were aiming to do, if you could give yourself like a grade, A, B, C, D, F, plus or minus, what would you give yourself? And a lot of times I'll get things kind of in like the C plus to B minus range. Sometimes I'll get even like lows into the D's or whatever. And I'll kind of ask them, well, so why a D plus instead of a D minus? Like, so we're switching the focus onto that. What did I do well that I didn't absolutely fail? And I have yet to have anybody say, oh, I give myself a complete F, because inevitably, if we have some kind of a record of whether it's text messages between us, whether it's some kind of a food journal or eating journal or something that I can look at and talk with them through, I can always find the pieces where they have made progress. And humans, and we've talked about this with our friend Brian Fretwell, humans tend to focus on the threat or the negative things, the setbacks, the things that we're not doing well, instead of focusing on the positive things. And so I think that having any kind of a scale definitely shows that there is that gray area, that flexibility. And I love that concept with people, because I really think this all or none thinking is like the kryptonite of, health behavior change. Like this is the thing that trips people up.
I mean, I have zero data, but I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that it's no matter how it plays out or what it looks like, at the root is it's everything or nothing, and I think we just have such like I mean, I think in some good ways, like I think it's a good thing to kind of be like fascinated with mastery, and like excited about when people learn to do something really well. But I think the downside of that is I think we applaud that so much that we forget how we get there. And it's just about being there and not the process of getting there. And I don't know anybody that's been exceptional at something that won't adamantly tell you like it's the process is the point. Like you want, if you want to get better at, cooking or playing an instrument or building exercise into your day, whatever it is, like you've got to do the reps, you've got to do the work of getting there. And like we put that end goal on such a pedestal that it's like we I think a lot of times when people set out to like make changes to their lives, it's okay, where do I want to be? Like, how do I want my life to look like? And then I'm going to go do all of those things, right? Like
Yep.
the person I want to be in a year does this and this and this and this and this and does it this way and this many times a week and everything. And so I just going to go do those things. And we don't build that
Yeah.
person. We just try to like adopt, we try to skip all these steps
This
and
is
be
what
that
I'm going to
person in the
do.
future.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we miss the entire process. And to me, like that goal or whatever, okay, I like goals, but that's a moment along the process. Like that goal is still part of the process because there's process before and after,
Yep.
right? Like it's not just,
Yeah.
it's not like you get there
Yeah.
and like, okay, I'm here now. No, you're still in the process. And then the next minute comes where you have to decide how you're going to live your life, you know?
Yep. Yeah. And just back to your point about mastery, mastery is simply lots of reps. And those masters of whatever you're focused on, those masters of, running 10K races or half marathons, or those masters that like can just cook anything in their kitchen out of nothing, and those masters that like are smooth sailing through their careers, any of those things that you're sort of eyeing for your own life, that mastery took a lot of flexibility along the way. I am 100% certain that those masters got bored out of their skulls doing these boring reps over and over at times. And I guarantee those masters also had to get really creative with, okay, what does progress look like at this moment when like my spouse is sick and or we unexpectedly had to relocate into a different location, or all of a sudden I have more responsibilities at work and I just don't have the same schedule I used to. Like those kinds of things, masters have to deal with all of those things too. They don't just arrive at the goal, like exactly like you're saying, you don't just get there. So I think part of it is just accepting that there are going to be times when progress looks really boring and almost too easy. And then there's going to be times where it seems almost impossible to make progress in this area because all of these other areas are taking attention. So I think that's part of this whole conversation around expect the unexpected, because part of the journey is truly like just kind of rolling with it. And this is where I'd really like people to try and shift their perspective or their interpretation of that unexpected life occurrence as almost one of excitement or growth and learning, like actually being, I'll never forget having this conversation with our friend Lance that I talked about earlier. Lance Davison has been an incredible friend and mentor to me as I've been going through my entrepreneurial journey the last couple of years. And I remember talking to him I think it was last spring or something, or last fall. And I was just like, man, I'm just like in this place where I don't really know my next step. And I just want to be here. And this is what I want for my business. And this is like, I was doing the thing where I was wanting to jump ahead to that goal, that end thing. And I could not see how to get there because the next right thing to do just felt so insignificant and small to me that I was just like, no, that's not the right thing to do, blah, blah, blah. And Lance is sitting there like smiling and like watching, listening, nodding and listening to this conversation. And he just lights up and he's like, I am really excited for you right now. And I was like, what are you freaking talking about? Because I'm losing my mind. And he's like, you're in a space where you're about to hit this huge growth trajectory. And I cannot wait for you to get on the other side of this. Like, this is going to be super cool. So he's just shifted that. I was looking at this situation as being like this huge obstacle and like super scary and I don't know how to do it. And he's looking at it from a totally different light where he's like, this is actually really exciting because you get to build some new skills and you get to get creative with how you do this. And so I think that could be a really helpful message for our listeners to take away when it comes to something as simple as, how do I fit exercise into my day? this can be really exciting for you to just get
Mm-hmm.
creative and play around with what works for
Yeah.
you, instead of saying, well, I have to get to the gym, I have to go to this class, I have to get this number of steps, whatever it is. So anyway, that was one of my examples, just
Yeah.
personally, of shifting that perspective into, actually, this is a really good
Mm-hmm.
thing, and it's
Right.
uncomfortable because it's a stretch.
Right. I'm glad you said that, because that's what I was, as you started that, I was like, will you talk about perspective shift? But you
There you
just did.
go.
But I'm going to
See?
piggyback on you. I'm going to
Yeah,
climb aboard and piggyback for a minute.
that's okay. I'm strong. I can carry you.
I believe it. Um, I think that it is really important, because that perspective shift of, am I, when I start this attempt or whatever, do I have to get everything right, or do I embrace the process for the process, whatever that unfolds like? Because I'm a big believer. I don't think there's lessons in every quote unquote failure. I think there's lessons in most of them.
Mm-hmm.
I know they don't all have lessons. Sometimes things are just hard and they suck, and I get that.
That's
So if
okay too. Mm-hmm.
yeah, like a traumatic event, I don't like, let's find the lesson. No, okay.
No.
But when things go, just kind of wrong or out of sorts, or we get out of rhythm, I think a lot of times there's something really valuable there for us. And if the point is get it right the first time and keep it right, okay, then the only option is what you've decided is right, based on really not any good information, our own
Yep.
made up idea of what the process is going to be, based
Yep.
on nothing, or at best our past attempts, which, let's be honest, for most of us aren't accurate assessments of what we're capable of or what things should look like.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Yeah.
really decide these things without any information, without having any idea what's going to happen in the next 5 minutes, and say, this is my only option, it's got to look like this. Whereas if we are open to the process, then our perspective when things go wrong, quote unquote wrong, or we quote unquote fail, is, okay, so what does this have for me? What can I take from this that I can then apply to this next time around? And I can do it a little better, or a little more efficiently, a little smarter,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. And one thing I really learned from just listening to, even just like entrepreneurs, who have been doing this a long time and have been successful, is like, man, you just take whatever comes, and you figure out look at it, figure out what it has to offer you. Because
Mm-hmm.
I think most of the time that when we make these attempts and we reach a point where we have some resistance, we have some, we lose our footing a little bit, whatever, that there's a similarity there a lot in attempt after attempt, that we're reaching a point where I think that resistance isn't necessarily external, it's more internal.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it looks different externally, it's the same thing that we are coming into conflict within ourselves that isn't allowing us past that, whether it's limiting beliefs or, whatever. And until we take a deep breath and push into that, I think we're going to continually get stopped at the same spot.
Yeah.
Even if it looks different, I think it's like that we were talking about earlier. Even if it looks different, it all comes down to all or none. Even if it looks different, there's something internally that you are needing to work through,
Mm-hmm.
address, come out from a different angle, and then go, oh, it wasn't that thing. I just needed to grow a little.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just needed to shed some things that were holding me back. I needed to be open to embracing the unknown and just stepping confidently into it, knowing that I can manage whatever is there. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
And that's a cool thing to point out to clients too.
Mm-hmm.
When I have clients share stories with me that they don't quite see that growth happening, I'll be like, wait a minute, but this is really cool because look at what you did here. Do you realize that you stepped into that uncomfortable place where you didn't know how to handle that situation, or maybe you were kind of scared about how to approach it, or I'm going to fail or
Yeah.
whatever, I'm going to do it quote wrong, but then you took action anyway, and you
Mm-hmm.
took action in the best meaningful way for you. And whatever it is, it could be the simplest little like food decision, or you like the little ways to get extra steps in their day, or whatever it could be, like the smallest little thing. but there's a lesson to be had there. And it's really important for people to recognize it. And especially in those little things that might be a little easier to approach. Then when you have a really big thing come, you can invoke that same like approach, that same, courage and flexibility and creativity.
Yeah.
And there's,
absolutely.
I always think back to triathlon because a lot of my life lessons happened in triathlon. And there's a saying, control the controllables, meaning on a day that's going to take you anywhere from like the really fast ones are doing it in like less than 10 hours, but you have up to 17 hours to finish this day. There is an entire like bucket of weird craziness that can happen all day. And you have 3 different disciplines. You have all this equipment. You have like miles and miles to cover, right? So control the controllables. Yeah. And I put this into practice with clients all the time. Like when you're planning for something like, I have a client who travels for work a lot. And he's really working on consistent activity, like daily active physical activity, and then making these choices around food. And his diet isn't terrible. It's just he has so much he's thinking. He's a physician. He has so much he's thinking about and deciding, and so much mental energy that's going into his work that he like can't be bothered to spend that energy on making food decisions throughout the day. It just is not going to happen. And so we've taken to, when we sit down and talk with each other, he's very present. We have this conversation and I'm like, well, let's talk about this upcoming work trip you have. What are some things you can do? And we talk through it before the work trip happens. And guess what? Those decisions are basically already, they're not necessarily set in stone, but you've at least entertained. This is what is likely to happen. These are the places we usually go for dinner or meals. This is about the timing of it. Here are some hiccups that usually happen. Like I spend too long with a complicated patient and then work or lunch gets pushed back. Then what do you do? So we just talk about those things ahead of time. And we discuss like, okay, what are some nutrition choices that you want to see yourself make in those instances? We just talk about that ahead, and it makes a big difference because then he is not taxed with trying to make those decisions on the fly when things come at him. He's just like, oh yeah, I've already, talked about that. I already have a plan or an idea of how I'm going to handle that. Even if that plan doesn't exactly play out that way, it's less mental angst that he has to put into it. So, yeah.
Well, in that planning ahead, I mean, we talk about it a lot here, but planning ahead is so helpful anyway, just because, I mean, usually if like the issue with exercise or what to eat or that kind of stuff, a lot of times comes in the moment where it's like, okay, it's time to do it. I don't know what to do. Or like, I got to make the decision, or I've been making decisions all day and now it's 7:30 at night. I just got home. What am I going to make for dinner? McDonald's, of course.
Trying to do it when you're tired or hungry or your body
under pressure
is
time wise, like we got to get food dinner because kids got, of course you're going to grab McDonald's or whatever. Yeah. Why wouldn't you? But if we have those decisions made ahead of time, then we don't have to make them in the moment. And so like you're talking about, it's like looking at the weekend ahead, like what are things going to look like? How can we best possible take a few minutes and build out this weekend so that you don't really have to think much. You can just kind of execute. And I do that a lot with clients, whether unexpected or expected when they're going out of town, but I had, this is probably 4 or 5 months ago, I had a lady who's, her mom got really sick. She lives up somewhere Northwest Idaho, Montana, somewhere up in there. And it was kind of a like last minute thing. She was having to leave town. She has a pretty well set up home gym. So programs I've written for her have been based around quite a bit of equipment. Right. And she sends me a text like, hey, I got to leave tomorrow. I'm probably going to be up there for a week, maybe 2. Like, what do I do? Right.
Yeah.
So we hopped on the phone real quick. We talked through a few things. Hey, what do you think, you're going to be able to do time wise? I know your mom's sick. What are you willing to commit to, And we came out with this kind of plan of like, hey, for right now, she was like, I don't know. What I do know is that I'm going to be at the hospital a lot. And if I have some downtime, I can walk. right? I can just walk. It's going to be probably going to be on the phone with family. I'm probably going to be kind of nervous and pacing anyway. It'll probably be good for me. Cool. Let's start there. If things change, let me know and we can adapt. A few days later, I'm actually going to be at home at her house for the next several days. I brought my little bag of resistance bands with me. Cool. Let me write up a few things for you to do for that. You know what I mean? And so there's just that, like, if you can take a minute and look at what you think is going to be doable for whatever's changed, make a plan accordingly, then you have some footing. And then I think it's easy to adapt like in a few days, because you're like, oh, adapting earlier was really pretty simple and pretty easy. So I can adapt again. Now I can make changes that I need to. And then if things get crazy, if mom takes a turn for the worse, family comes in, whatever, well, I can adapt again. And I think a lot of this isn't just about planning out like what's going to work for a certain situation. A lot of it is just like practicing and rehearsing and reinforcing that flexibility is not only necessary, it's really okay. Like it's not just like, oh, you have to be, no, like it's a really good thing. And it takes a lot of this like pressure and intensity and stress of getting it all done just the way I thought it should be all done when I decided this however long ago, and lets you be a human being living in a world with a million variables that you come into contact with every day, and being able to adapt. Like, just like, it kind of goes back to like body kindness from last week, like just being kind to yourself and you're letting yourself do what you need to do, not like, oh, I guess I have to. No, you need to do this. You need to be able to be flexible. You need to bend, you need to adapt. And it gives you permission to do the thing you need to do to continue to make progress. Like, it's really the only way that we make long-term progress is if we can begin to shed this all or none stuff, understand things are going to happen. That's part of it. And adapting and bending and flexing is the only way that we keep going forward.
Yeah. And maybe even developing some kind of an affirmation or self-talk around that, where you can remind yourself that you made the best decision for you given the circumstances. So it may not have been, perfect. Like, would everybody respond that way in that situation? No, because we're human and we have a lot of different things going on. Everybody approaches things differently, but did you make the best decision for you? That is really the key of what we're after, because a lot of people will kind of tell me things like, oh, I'm just too tired, after a long day at work, I'm just too tired, I need to rest. But then when we really get into it, they're like, well, but my body's been achy lately and I know I need to move more during the day. So like all of these other things kind of come out where it's like, okay, so you're feeling tired, but could that feeling of tired and sluggishness and achiness be remedied by taking some different action earlier in the day, or approaching that a little differently? Or I have a let's just see saying that I use with clients, like, let's just see, like, you can step out the door and start heading around the block. And if you still feel crappy, then go back home and rest. Like, that's fine too. But just helping people understand that if they make the best decision for them in the moment, they're making the right decision. And so there's all of these things we've talked about, like you can plan ahead, entertain some of those unforeseen circumstances or possibilities ahead of time, and really kind of think through how you will maybe pivot or be nimble around those. Like, how can I navigate some of those things in a way that works for me? What are some things that tend to trip me up? Start playing through some of those scenarios. And then when it comes time, don't place any harsh judgment on yourself of whether you're doing something right or wrong. Simply look at the situation you're given and take a moment to kind of leverage your own strengths and some of the plans you've talked through. What are some possibilities? You don't just have to take your ball and go home. There's lots of different ways to approach it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think it's worth making the point. I mean, I think this is important too, is that even if, like, let's say you kind of succumb to that all or none stuff, and one meal turns into a day, and then a second day, and then it's a week later, and you're like, yeah, I just kind of let it all go. I think it's really important that even if you find yourself in that situation, to know that you can step back into what you were doing just as easily as you were doing it a week or two ago, right? Mm-hmm. Like you don't have to like pay your penance or sit in timeout for a certain amount of time before you can try again. Like you literally can just go, okay, like this week, I made a lot of decisions this week. I wish I hadn't, and I'm frustrated by that and whatever. But you can also go, but now I'm just going to just get right back into what I was doing. And it really can be that undramatic, and I'm not poking fun at anybody there, but it seems like sometimes it's like, okay, so it feels like starting and stopping is always this dramatic thing. Like, okay, I'm starting, so everything's changing. I'm throwing out anything that has any kind of sugar in my house. Anything
I'm writing lists. I'm making like a whiteboard thing.
Here's everything I can't do. Here's everything I have to do. And it's just like dramatic announcement. I am, like it's just like this big dramatic thing. And then when it's like, oh, we have a few days that didn't go like we thought we would, it's like, here's the gasoline. Who wants to come watch me burn it down?
Who's got the match?
And it's like, you can, but my guess is you have done that a bunch of times. And be honest, has it worked? Has it ever worked? Is that cycle, is that approach working at all? No, it's not. I know it's not, because it doesn't work, because it's impossible to be successful long-term with all or none thinking. You just can't. And so instead, like the alternative is, what if you're just like, okay, let's get back at it. Like, what if it's just that? Because it can be that little bit of energy to decide to do it. You don't have to muster all this stuff. You don't have to get motivated and excited, and you can just go, okay, hey, text your coach or your friend or whatever, like, hey, had a few rough days. Let's make some basic, cool. Let's get back to eating a couple of vegetables a day, and let's shoot for 10 minutes of walking or something. And let's just do that for a few days and get back into it. And you know what? You do a few days of that and people are like, all right, let's do some more. I'm ready. And it really can just be that easy. And I think it's just important to note here that I don't think we expect any of you who struggle with all or none thinking, all or none listening.
All or none listening.
All or none listening.
There's that too.
There is that. All or none thinking, like, listen to this episode and then it doesn't happen anymore. Like, no, right? It's going to happen probably. So when it does, you absolutely can just go, okay, I'm just going to get back to what I was doing.
Period.
And it can be that, and that's it. Like, it can be that simple. Yeah. In fact, I don't like to say should, but I think it should oftentimes just be, like, okay, so because I think that is a really important thing to practice and to have a bunch of exposure to, like things not going like we thought they would, and then just decide to get back at it. Like, that's where it all falls apart for most of us is, oh, I didn't do it for so many days, so now I guess I can't do it anymore. It's like, no, you just go right back to it. And you do that a few times and you really learn, oh yeah, I guess I can't ever really screw this up because I can just decide to get back to it.
Yeah. I have an example of that with people. I work with a lot of intuitive eating kinds of concepts in my work. And I have a whole host of clients that really make a lot of progress in this area with the whole rejecting the diet mentality, being grateful for what their bodies can do, and practicing hunger and satiety, awareness, like all of this stuff. And I tell them, kind of back to your point of like, okay, that's great that things are ticking along really nicely. What might happen if things don't go so well, And so I kind of prepare them that don't be surprised if some of these old thoughts or beliefs start popping up again and causing, wreaking some havoc. That's another piece of this expect the unexpected. I mean, we're talking a lot about like life occurrences and like daily, challenges and stuff. But what if like some of those thoughts and belief systems that you thought you had put to rest and were long gone, and all of a sudden a client texts me and they're like, dang it, I just had this thing happen. I thought I was past that. Like, what's happening? And they tend to start dwelling on the fact that this is still there, that this is, and especially with disordered eating, that doesn't just go away. In fact, there's a reason why we say people are in eating disorder recovery, because it's just like saying I'm an alcoholic. in recovery. Like it doesn't just go away. Like you're just done with it.
No.
And so that unexpected piece is like, bam, you're hit with this thought or this occurrence that you thought you had worked through, and here it is, and it feels icky, and you feel like maybe you failed somehow, or to your point, you're having to start over again. Damn it. Like oh my gosh, I'm starting from square one again. And I'm just like, no, this is okay that this happened. It's just showing you that that's still part of you somewhere, and then it crops up. How are you going to approach it? Like, how can you work through it instead of just stopping your progress and like telling yourself you have to start over again and make it this big fanfare event? Let's just like talk about all of the strategies you've built over the last several weeks to deal with this inevitable occurrence.
Inevitable. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you make a really good point, because a lot of times I think we see those things crop up again somewhere and we get pissed about it, or we're frustrated about it.
Totally.
Or like, if we're really like, but if we think about it, if we're really wanting to address this issue, then seeing it crop up somewhere else should make us go, oh, okay, it's in another place that I need to address. Because what's important is not that I just try a little bit and this thing's gone now, but what's important is that I actually address it in a way where I can move beyond this limitation or whatever. And so if it crops up, I think that should be for us kind of like, oh, good, I know it exists somewhere else and I can tend to that and I can take care of it, so that I actually address the entirety of the problem. Because what we don't understand, or what's hard to understand sometimes, is that a lot of these thoughts we have about our body and food and, being a healthier person, like, it's not just a thing that we're very aware of. Like, these things have roots that go into all kinds of places of our life that we don't know until it exposes itself, and that's the thing about diet culture, is it works into our language. It works into how we talk to our kids at the dinner table. It works into how we talk about preparing food and how clothes fit. And there's so much that it weaves itself into that we don't really know it's there until it shows us that it's there. And when it shows us that it's there, let's not be like, oh, I guess I didn't do the work. It's like, no, you did. Yeah. There's just still more to do. And if you really want to do the work, then you're going to be excited about doing all of the work. And I think that's where a lot of us get hung up, is it's just hard to do the work sometimes. And I think that comes back to, you see a magazine, 30 days, bikini ready by summer, I mean, just it's so fast, it's so easy, it's so quick. And if you don't do it that way, then we feel like, I'm doing it wrong. And it's just all backwards. But yeah. I had a point. I think I said it in there. I don't know. I kind of got off track.
I think your point was, well received. Just the things that we sort of tell ourselves about progress, it's almost like you just arrive, and then none of that other crap that you worked through is ever going to come up again. Just like, gone. I've dealt with all of it. I've solved all the problems. It's done. And that's just not how humans work. That's just not how life works. And so the whole point of this entire episode, if you haven't gotten it, is that life is unpredictable. Behavior change is also unpredictable, and humans learn and grow in so many different ways and capacities throughout their life stages. Even like something that worked as a strategy when you were in your like 30s or 40s is maybe not the same strategy that's going to work for you when you're, nearing retirement age or whatever. Right. And so just things like that, where you have to be kind of flexible and nimble. And on that note, I have one more thing I wanted to share that's an Ironman reference, because, this whole control the controllables, like you have this big plan about this big day that you go in for, but there's also a saying in Ironman that everything is temporary. So when you feel good, it's temporary. You are going to feel like crap at some point. And when you feel crappy, it's temporary. You're going to feel good again. And so like working through that ebb and flow of the day is a similar concept to what we're talking about. Like trying not to go into these extreme places, but just keeping it as consistent as you can, given the external factors that are going to influence that. And I'm reminded of one of my favorite triathletes, Andy Potts. He's an Olympian. He's 45 years old. He's still out there crushing it. And I believe he won Ironman Coeur d'Alene the first year I raced it. And my husband is a huge fan of his too. And so he was listening to his interview at the finish line. And, they asked him like, how did you put your race together today? And they're asking him these questions. He goes, well, when I felt good out there, I really pushed it, leaned into the race, made sure I was on top of nutrition, did everything I could to manage my day well. And when I didn't feel good, I pushed it. I leaned into the race. I managed my nutrition. I did everything I could. And so, you're kind of waiting to hear from this like amazing athlete, these different strategies he had for managing those highs and lows of the day. And his strategy was literally to be as consistent as he could and to continually no matter how he felt, he was going to put the effort in to that moment. Like, what does this mean to take care of my nutrition and lean into the race and push it in this moment? And so, not to say that you have to approach your life as in, quote, pushing it, excuse me, slightly different, connotation here. But what does it mean for you to take the next right action, to be kind of flexible and accept how life is coming at you right now? And how are you going to approach that in a positive way? So,
And I guarantee that in those moments where he wasn't feeling as great, like things changed. His pace probably changed.
Sure.
What he was doing practically internally probably changed. Like at the beginning of the race, he may have been like, really like down the road focused, and in those moments, he may have been like one step, another step.
Exactly.
So, and here's the interesting thing is from the outside perspective, we may not notice any of that, right? Because he's as a master, right? He's just learned the importance of just continuing to adapt as he needs to be consistent. And we go, wow, he just ran that whole freaking race. He never slowed down, or, you know what I mean? From our perspective, where for him, there's probably a bunch of changes that go on, a bunch of different demands that need to be met and that kind of thing. And it's the same for us. Like we just have to learn, how do I continue to just plug along, because whether I'm like looking down the road 3 months from now, or I'm doing literally one step at a time, guess what? Both approaches are taking you in the right direction. What doesn't take you in the right direction? Saying, I quit the race. I'm just going to try again another time.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I guess my point I want to drive home is the process, the journey, the trail is the entire thing. Right? Goals along the way are just little pit stops or points we've decided to plot. They're not stopping points. It just continues to go. And if the point is the process, then we have to be willing to just dive into the process for whatever it holds, take what we can from it, and keep going.
So the last thing I want to say on this episode, and I wish I would have said it earlier on, but if you've stayed with us this long and you're listening to the last couple minutes, we are going to ask you to share a story with us so we can share it on our Instagram reel. I would love it if you just like record a little selfie of you talking to your phone, share a story of how you have encountered this in your own life. And you can, if you don't have my phone number or Michael's phone number, if you're just listening, you don't know either of us, send it to our email or reach out to us on Instagram. Say, how do I submit this? Because we want to share how some of you, the masters that are doing this in your own lives, are actually practicing this and can inspire other people with some of your ideas.
Absolutely. And so we have a little like framework for, was it 2 sentences, 1 sentence, maybe? And would you be able to put this in the show notes, maybe just so people can read it?
Sure.
If you remember. So it's just this, I had planned blank, some sort of healthy action. I had planned to work out in the morning, make this, whatever. And this happened, whatever happened. So I did this instead, right? So basically tell us what you were going to do, how things demanded a change, and how you pivoted, because we just want to celebrate this idea of embracing or expecting the unexpected and being flexible.
Yeah. Try and keep it short. We're talking like, quick little 10-second, 15-second
as
little
short
clip
as possible.
Yeah. So we can, that's how social media works these days. So we can put it together. And if we get enough submissions, then we'll thread them together in multiple reels. But anyway,
sure.
So we would love you to be a part of Middleish.
Yes, always. All right. I'm good.
Um,
You good?
yeah, I think
You got a
so.
meeting in the mundane?
Um,
I
yeah,
got
man,
one.
go ahead
Do you want me
because
to
I
go?
need to
Okay.
decide on mine. Yeah.
So mine is a few moments, but also one in particular that I'll point out. So, my oldest daughter Lila, she's 11 now, and things are just changing. She's gonna go to middle school next year. She's just, she's getting more mature, less interest in certain things, more interest in certain things. And one thing, like, she's just really getting into music lately. Like, she's always been a music lover, but she's just really expanding and loving listening to music. And she just has a good ear for it. She understands music well. She's very artistic. She gets feeling and emotions and understands lyrics and stuff. And it's just, as a musician myself, it's been really fun. And one of my favorite things that we've been doing lately, and we just did this last night, we've probably done this like 4 times, is in the evening, like if Sophie's in bed, Sophie's my youngest, so she goes to bed earlier. If she's in bed, Lila will often just kind of hang out in her room, um, either watch something on her iPad or be playing, like Minecraft with friends or something, just kind of chill. And what I've started doing is just going in there and saying, "Hey, can I just hang out with you?" You know, and I'll put on some music on my phone, or she'll put on some music on her iPad, and we'll just listen to music together and maybe kind of do our own thing. I might be dinking around on my phone while she's playing, but we're chatting, and it's just like, it's like hanging out when you were a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, you're not really doing anything. You don't have any objective. You're just hanging out, doing stuff, listening to music. And for me, those were some of my favorite times as a kid, was just like that, just hanging out and being. And so getting to do that with my daughter is like super fun. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're not doing anything in particular, we're not doing anything exciting at all. We're just laying on our bed, thinking around, chit chatting, listening to music. And it's the best. Like, if it just feels like a really comfortable, open, safe space. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
just being together without any kind of objective. And it's
Mm-hmm.
real fun. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's fine.
That is a really good one. And you've kind of inspired me to share a similar situation where I went over to a friend's house last night. My friend Justine and I have been friends for, oh, geez, I don't know, 10 years or more.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to put storage wax on my cross country skis because obviously ski season is over.
Right.
And I don't have a bench set up in my house to do this. She does. And she lives like a few blocks away. So I'm like, hey, can I come over and put storage wax on? I
Mm-hmm.
haven't seen her in weeks. Like, we've kind of loosely tried to catch up. She's been like traveling. I've been busy, whatever. And so a lot of times the tendency is to like, oh, we have to go out for like dinner, or we have to have this like time where
Yeah.
we're just catching up and we're just reconnecting. But I went over there with my skis and I'm like, okay, I've only got like, I mean, we had like 45 minutes putting wax on skis, and we just like fell into just
Yeah.
conversation. Like, we just saw each other yesterday and
Mm-hmm.
just catching up on things. She's telling me about this river trip she just took. I'm telling her about the mountain bike camp and, some of our camping adventures and things we're planning, and
Yeah.
just chatting in a very comfortable way. And it's really, really special to have those relationships in our lives,
Yeah.
whether it's with your daughter, whether it's with a friend, that you can just fall into step with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be doing nothing and it's
Nothing.
still a really cool,
Yeah.
connection that you make. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of had a similar thing with a friend yesterday. So
I think those times where you
good.
have a really good time doing absolutely nothing is a real testament to the relationship.
Yeah.
Because I think you have to have a really solid relationship to be able to do that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Cool. Well,
Okay.
thank you,
Um,
everybody.
We
Yeah.
appreciate your listening and your
Mm-hmm.
support, which we swear we will say at the top of the podcast one of these days, that you can, buy us a cup of coffee or
Mm-hmm.
a beer or something by
Mm-hmm.
supporting us um, on our podcast
Mm-hmm.
channel. So you can go on to Anchor and click support, and you can support our podcast if you like what we're bringing to you.
Yep. And you can also just share, rate, review, subscribe. All that stuff helps too. If you like what we're doing, sharing it with a friend is probably one of the best ways to expose somebody to this. Because when it comes from a trusted source, like, hey, I think you really like this, people are a lot more likely to give it a listen. So
Yep.
we always really appreciate that. So,
Yes.
all right.
Thank you. And we
Thank you
will
much.
see you. Yeah, we'll see you all later.